This is Update Point. In a high-stakes White House meeting, President Donald Trump hosted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and laid out an ambitious and highly controversial vision for the Gaza Strip, transforming the war-torn territory into what he described as the Riviera of the Middle East, a gleaming coastal destination under American oversight. The proposal has ignited fierce debate, drawing sharp criticism from across the Arab world, Europe, and even some U.S. allies. While supporters argue it represents bold thinking for post-war reconstruction. Before we start, wherever you're watching or listening from, drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel. Today, we'll continue this conversation in the comments and respond to your questions. Tonight on Update Point, we examine several key developments unfolding on the international stage and within U.S. domestic policy. We begin with the Middle East, where discussions between Washington and Jerusalem have taken a dramatic turn regarding the long-term future of Gaza. During their recent joint appearance, President Trump outlined a plan that envisions the United States assuming a significant ownership role in the Gaza Strip following the conclusion of current hostilities. He suggested that the area, once cleared of existing structures and hazards, could be redeveloped into a luxury seaside destination comparable to the famous French Riviera, complete with high-end resorts, economic opportunities, and infrastructure designed to attract visitors and investment from around the world. This concept builds on earlier statements in which the president emphasized Gaza's potential as valuable coastal real estate. He has spoken repeatedly about the possibility of creating thousands of jobs, building modern communities, and turning a region long associated with conflict into a place of prosperity and beauty for people everywhere. In one description, he highlighted how the Mediterranean shoreline could host world-class facilities, marinas, hotels, and leisure areas that would draw international tourism and generate substantial revenue. Prime Minister Netanyahu, standing alongside the president, appeared receptive to exploring innovative ideas for the territory's future. Israeli officials have described the proposal as creative and potentially transformative, suggesting it could mark a historic shift away from decades of instability. Proponents argue that large-scale redevelopment could provide a path toward stability, economic growth, and security in a region that has endured repeated cycles of violence and hardship. Yet the plan has provoked immediate and widespread condemnation. Palestinian leaders and communities have rejected any suggestion of mass relocation, viewing it as a direct threat to their right to remain on their land. Many describe the idea as amounting to forced displacement on a massive scale, a move they say would erase their historical and cultural ties to Gaza and repeat painful chapters from the past. Several Arab governments have issued strong statements opposing the concept. Egypt and Jordan, which share borders with Gaza and the broader Palestinian territories, have made clear they will not accept large numbers of displaced people, citing both humanitarian concerns and the potential for regional instability. Saudi Arabia, usually a close U.S. partner, released an unusually pointed rebuke, reaffirming its long-standing support for Palestinian statehood and self-determination. Beyond the region, European capitals expressed alarm. Officials in Britain, France, and Germany warned that any policy involving the permanent removal of populations could violate fundamental principles of international humanitarian law. Legal experts have pointed to prohibitions against forcible transfers of civilians in occupied territories, raising the possibility that elements of the proposal could conflict with established treaties and norms. Even within the United States, public opinion remains deeply divided. Polls indicate only a small minority support the idea of U.S. ownership or long-term administration of Gaza, while a clear majority express opposition. Critics argue the plan distracts from more immediate needs: delivering humanitarian aid, securing a lasting ceasefire, and addressing the severe humanitarian crisis that has left much of the population without adequate food, water, medical care, or shelter. Adding to the controversy, the president has shared visual representations of what such a redeveloped Gaza might look like. These materials depict palm-lined boulevards, luxury developments, and recreational spaces rising from what is currently a landscape of destruction. Some of the imagery includes symbolic figures enjoying the envisioned paradise, prompting accusations that the presentation dehumanizes the current residents and glosses over the immense suffering that has already occurred. Analysts note that implementing any such vision would require resolving a host of practical and ethical challenges. Clearing unexploded ordnance, rebuilding infrastructure from the ground up, and establishing governance mechanisms would demand years, if not decades, of sustained effort and enormous financial resources. Questions remain about who would fund the project, how security would be maintained, and whether any displaced populations would have meaningful input or guarantees of return. Meanwhile, the proposal arrives against the backdrop of ongoing diplomatic efforts to stabilize the region. Ceasefire negotiations continue, with mediators attempting to bridge gaps between the parties. Humanitarian organizations stress that millions of people in Gaza still face acute shortages, making any long-term redevelopment plan contingent on first addressing these life-or-death priorities. Shifting our focus to another pressing diplomatic matter, the United States and Mexico have reached an important agreement on water sharing that promises greater predictability for American farmers and communities in the Southwest. Under the terms of a long-standing treaty, Mexico has obligations to deliver water from certain rivers to the United States over multi-year cycles. In recent years, however, deliveries have been inconsistent, leading to accumulated shortfalls that have severely affected agriculture in states like Texas, where irrigation is critical during dry periods. President Trump had previously warned that continued delays could prompt economic measures, including targeted tariffs on Mexican goods entering the U.S. market. After months of negotiations, both governments announced a revised arrangement designed to smooth out the supply schedule. Mexico has now committed to providing a minimum annual volume, at least 350,000 acre-feet, during the current 5-year cycle, rather than allowing large deliveries at the end to offset earlier shortfalls. This change is intended to give farmers and water managers more reliable planning horizons, reducing the boom and bust pattern that has hurt rural economies. Officials on both sides of the border describe the deal as constructive and mutually beneficial. U.S. agricultural leaders welcome the predictability, noting it will help protect jobs and maintain food production in drought-prone areas. Mexican authorities emphasize their willingness to meet treaty commitments while protecting their own domestic water needs. The agreement represents one area of cooperation amid broader trade and migration discussions between the two neighbors. It also underscores how water, often overlooked in geopolitical headlines, can become a source of tension or resolution depending on diplomatic management. Closer to home, the Department of Homeland Security has announced a significant adjustment to its immigration enforcement operations in Minnesota. Border Czar Tom Homan confirmed that approximately 700 federal agents, including personnel from Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Protection, are being withdrawn from the Minneapolis area with immediate effect. After the drawdown, roughly 2,000 officers will remain active in the state, a number that still represents a substantial federal presence compared to pre-existing levels. The decision follows weeks of intense activity and public controversy surrounding large-scale enforcement actions. Local leaders and community organizations had raised concerns about the scale of operations, including reports of confrontations and their impact on public safety and trust. The withdrawal comes in the wake of tragic incidents in which federal agents were involved in fatal shootings during enforcement encounters. These events sparked widespread protests, calls for accountability, and scrutiny of tactics used in residential neighborhoods and urban settings. President Trump himself acknowledged that certain outcomes should not have happened and suggested the need for a more measured approach going forward. DHS officials framed the move as a recalibration, not a full retreat, aimed at balancing vigorous enforcement with community relations and operational safety. Homan emphasized that immigration laws will continue to be upheld, but with resources redeployed in ways that reflect lessons learned from recent events. The adjustment has already influenced political discourse. In states like New Jersey, where competitive congressional races are underway, candidates from both parties have highlighted immigration policy as a defining issue, with some criticizing the initial surge and others defending the need for strong border security. These developments highlight the complex interplay between federal authority, local cooperation, and public sentiment in the realm of immigration enforcement. As operations evolve, questions remain about recruitment, training, oversight, and how best to carry out deportations while minimizing risks to both officers and civilians. One particularly disturbing account emerged from Minneapolis involving a U.S. citizen who reported being forcibly removed from her vehicle by masked federal agents. According to her description, agents shattered her car window, cut her seatbelt, and physically pulled her onto the ground before eventually verifying her status and releasing her. She described the experience as traumatic, involving broken glass, physical force, and a period of detention without immediate access to medical attention or legal counsel despite her disability. Similar reports have surfaced in other locations, raising broader concerns about the use of unmarked vehicles, aggressive entry tactics, and the risk of mistaken identity or excessive force during rapid enforcement actions. Civil rights advocates argue that such incidents erode community trust and complicate efforts to identify and remove individuals who lack legal status. Federal officials have maintained that agents operate under strict protocols and that any use of force is reviewed internally. Yet these episodes have fueled demands for greater transparency, body-worn cameras, and independent oversight to prevent future harm. Taken together, these stories illustrate the high stakes and human dimensions of current policy debates. From grand geopolitical visions in the Middle East to water treaties along the southern border and enforcement operations in American cities, decisions made in Washington continue to reverberate far beyond the Capitol. We will keep monitoring these stories as they develop. For Update Point, this has been our report. Thank you for joining us. We invite your thoughts below. What do these events mean for the future of U.S. foreign policy, border security, and international relations? We look forward to reading your perspectives and addressing questions in the comments.